So let's read the story. The young king of Glennain. Once upon a time, in the fair kingdom of Glennain, the young king grew restless. He had served his people well, protecting them from dangers outside and villains within. Under his good rule, Glennain had never seen such prosperity. But even though his armies were strong and his coffers full, the king was unhappy. For he desperately wanted a wife. Not just any wife. He wanted a woman who would love him more than his title, his possessions, and his power. One day, while the court was in session, the king made a declaration. "Send forth word to every corner of my kingdom that I desire a queen. Let a search be made among all the fair maidens of Glennain." All was silent in the king's court after he spoke, but only for a few moments before everyone started speaking at once. "Sire, I have a lovely daughter." "My niece would make a fine queen." "My sister is available, Your Highness." "I would be such a devoted queen." It seemed that everyone either knew someone or was someone who wanted ever so much to be the queen. The next morning, the young king woke with a headache. There was an overpowering sweet smell in the air. "What is that awful scent?" he asked as he stumbled to his bedroom door. He pushed against it, but the door wouldn't open. He shoved, and eventually it moved a bit, and a few of the mountain of love letters piled against the door tumbled inside. Every fair maiden in the kingdom, or her mother, had sent him a love letter drenched in her favorite perfume, promising undying love for the king if he would only pick her to be his queen. Right then and there, the king resolved to go about this process in an entirely different way. He summoned his most trusted general and arranged for his strongest army to ready themselves for a campaign against the giants of the north. He marched out at the head of his army, but after just one day's march, he left the battle to his general and came back in secret to his castle. His servants had bought the clothes of a common bricklayer, and that night he put them on, took off the ring that every king of Glennain had worn for 700 years, and hung it on a chain around his neck, and he set off to tour his kingdom. He labored as he traveled, taking what work he could find. He lived on a builder's income, but secretly, in every village, in every town, he searched for a woman who would love him for who he was. It took him 7 years to travel through the whole kingdom, never stopping at any one place for more than a month. It was getting dark as he entered the last village in Glennain, and he began to despair. Was there even one woman who would love him for who he was? Perhaps he would do better to marry a princess from a neighboring kingdom, or a noblewoman from his own court. He made his way to the inn and asked for a room and some supper. "Supper I can give you for a price," said the innkeeper, "but I have no room spare tonight." The baker just happened to be delivering bread at that very moment. When he had heard the conversation, he said to the king, "You can come and stay with us if you'd like. It's just me and my daughter now, but we have a cozy barn, if you wouldn't mind sharing with some of our animals. We have some building work that needs doing at the bakery." So the king agreed to stay in the baker's barn. But when he met the baker's daughter, his heart skipped a beat. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The king lived in the baker's barn for 2 months while he worked, and every day he was drawn to the baker's daughter. She was everything he was looking for in a queen. She was hardworking, thoughtful, and kind. She always found ways to make people in need, to help people in need, and that made her happy. And she knew how to listen. He found himself falling more and more in love with her. Then one day he mustered all the courage in his heart to ask her if she would consider marrying him. "I can't promise an easy life," he said. "I often don't even have a place to lay my head at night." She responded with cries of delight and tears of joy. "I have come to love you with all of my heart," she said. And then, once he was sure, the king took his ring from the chain around his neck, and he told her who he really was. They were married the next summer, and they had a great many children, and they lived happily ever after. The end.